So the headline in question today is that we actually have an official developer claiming they are working on a project that has the roadmap for Nintendo Switch 2 within their own job posting. So at face value, some people are assuming, oh, well, Nintendo's going to call it Nintendo Switch 2. And now this is the first official game development confirmation that we've had for Nintendo's next gen console. And we're going to unpack all this because this is something of a smaller indie developer. And I don't think you can just write home saying that they have any kind of inside knowledge for what Nintendo's planning with their next gen console. Could they have a dev kit in their hands? Absolutely. Will it be called Nintendo Switch 2? I don't think that confirms this. And we actually have some other pieces of information to remind you guys about that does insinuate that we've already seen a large number of developers claiming that they're developing actively for Nintendo's next gen hardware. So we're going to get on the same page with all these details. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to first kick it off by hopping over to DocTrey81's video because full credit goes to him for this discovery. A lot of what his channel focuses on is LinkedIn hiring posts and doing some investigative journalism online to find things that are largely missed by larger media outlets. So does really good work. Go subscribe to him. Go check him out if you haven't already. But you can see the first slide in question, which is a portion of the hiring post that reads PlayStation 5 C++ software engineers, February 2nd, 2024. Ace Maddox is looking for a remote C++ software engineers with a PlayStation game development background to work on our proprietary engine Falconaut, I think that's how you say it, for Project Fumax, if that's how you say that, a vehicle/aircraft based action game in development. The expectations of the job reads as follows: strong practical knowledge of C++, experience working on proprietary 3D engines, tools, and plugins for Blender, a positive mindset, every issue is an opportunity to improve existing code, you're ready to analyze and improve performance as required, perform high quality debugging, and fix reoccurring errors and warnings, don't even think about muting a warning, experience debugging across a variety of hardware configurations, enthusiastic about current/next gen consoles, and eager to learn more, knowledge of multi-threaded engine architecture with a respectable but limited number of threads to ensure the technical scope is manageable. Timely, structured, and self-motivated individuals are preferred. Strong written English skills. Trustworthy with high integrity to ensure project details remain confidential. 3 or more years of hands-on experience working with PlayStation, at least one ship title, whether indie or A+, strong interpersonal and communication skills, and proficiency in trigonometry and linear algebra. Now, from there, it gets a little bit more interesting because under the overview of the project notes, it says our Falconaut engine is being developed primarily for PS5 and Xbox Series X. Roadmap ambition, feature complete by Q3 2025. Target platforms, PS5/Xbox, Nintendo Switch 2, Windows 11, Steam Deck, and Mac OS. Expected development cycle, Project Fumax is scheduled to begin December 1st, 2025 and run for 36 months. So obviously the big point of interest with that entire job posting is just the straight up name drop and confirmation from the studio that they're planning something for Nintendo Switch 2. I, however, don't think this is anything more than them saying that we're developing something actively, an engine or a game that can run on Nintendo's next gen hardware. It's essentially the same kind of statement. They're not confirming the name Nintendo Switch 2. This is a small development studio that would not know information from Nintendo directly like that, but I do think that it's clear that there's a lot of moving parts behind the scenes for getting games ready for Nintendo's next gen hardware. We already talked about on this channel the large survey that was sent out to various different developers as part of Games Developer Conference, where a decent percentage, or over 200 to 250 people essentially is what it broke down to, actual developers verified as part of GDC, answered that they were working currently on a next generation Nintendo Switch game. So we've already had the confirmation of development happening behind the curtains. Clearly Nintendo themselves, while not saying anything about the console, have shown us multiple slides that insinuate that their future roadmap in terms of console hardware will support things like Nintendo Account, which is a confirmation that the thing exists. And we've even had all of the manufacturing reports and legal documents that got light shed on them between Bobby Kotick and Activision Blizzard, that whole situation, having a meeting with President Shintaro Furukawa with a PDF document attached to the email that says Switch NG. Like, yes, we know Nintendo's been moving puzzle pieces behind the scenes for a long time now, and I don't think this story is anything more than an additional piece of information to tack on to all of those existing reports that we've had. So I'm fully expecting a reveal of Nintendo Switch 2 to happen at some point this year. You probably remember there was an outstanding rumor for March that never really quite saw the light of day, because as soon as that rumor started to spread from Nate the Hate, there was then internal reports hitting literally every major online publication, Bloomberg, VGC, Reuters, amongst many others, that Nintendo decided to internally shift this thing to launch to early 2025 as opposed to a late 2024 launch. And logically, you would assume that an internal delay of launching the system would also impact something like the console reveal. Now the outstanding rumor is we're supposed to be getting a Indie Direct at some point this month. We're supposed to be getting a mainline Nintendo Direct in April, and then supposedly the big hardware reveal would be saved for June. Now, if we don't see an Indie Direct this month, we don't see any kind of Nintendo Direct Mini or mainline Direct next month, well then I'm not going to really put much stock into that June date. And at that point, I think it could happen as late as October again, where Nintendo kind of just copy paste their old strategy that they had with the Nintendo Switch, where we get a first look trailer in October and then the console actually launches and is available in early March next year in 2025. That's entirely a realistic possibility that they could do, but there is the potential that they want to give the follow-up to the Nintendo Switch a longer marketing cycle, and they want to start talking about big games that they want to be able to show off around the launch window of that console hardware, and they do decide to hold something dedicated in June for a first look or a reveal. We will also get a little tidbit of information from Nintendo at their next investors briefing, because they will have to forecast their fiscal year numbers for next year, which means they're not going to be able to fully dodge the question around whether or not those numbers include something like a new hardware forecast. They're not allowed to just straight up lie to investors, but they are allowed to dance around questions or say no comment. And I think investors clearly, at over 7 full years with the same flagship device, are going to be asking the hardball questions of where's your next generation hardware, what kind of sales forecast are you expecting for a said next gen console, and when are you going to communicate this to fans? So if it's just all no comment and we'll talk about hardware when we're ready to, that's going to be a very interesting response, and it's only going to go so far with investors before Nintendo has to start putting some hard numbers in their forecast. Now, at the end of this video, I kind of want to briefly pivot the conversation from the main talking points around it so far to address the recent online speculation that we might know the name for Nintendo's next gen console. I have not talked about this in a dedicated video. I honestly don't know how I feel about it. It's a very Nintendo-esque name, if you will, but probably the only one that could maybe be worse than the Wii U in terms of marketing, because if you remember the Wii U fiasco, it was a great, more powerful HD Wii system. Like, it was awesome and truly next gen in every way from the Wii, but Nintendo marketed it as the Wii U, the Wii for You, with a gamepad controller being the focal point, and you had things like Wiimotes in the controller that just worked the same, and the average consumer saw that and thought, this is just a tablet accessory for the Nintendo Wii that I already owned. It was a big drop the ball moment in marketing, and there wasn't clear-cut communication with the consumers that it was a true next generation leap in terms of capabilities and the games that it would support. Well, what's being reported upon online about us potentially knowing the name for Nintendo's next gen hardware is a YouTube survey that you have to keep in mind. Things like this have leaked titles before, like Nintendo Switch OLED model, for example, but I'm not putting all the stock in the world in this, because there was a survey circulating around where it was asking users which platforms they're interested in, and PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and Nintendo Switch Attach was cited in that survey. And if that is the name for Nintendo's next gen console, Nintendo needs to seriously consider letting go of some of the people who are coming up with names for their consoles and go with a more straightforward, direct to consumer approach where they understand what's happening. Sadly, a name like Nintendo Switch 2 kind of makes the most sense on paper. If you look at what PlayStation has done, it's very clear every time they launch a new generation. We're up to PS5 right now, and there's no doubt that the PS6 will be the next true next gen thing. We'll probably get a PS5 Pro in the meantime from the sounds of things, but it's very clear cut and consumers know what it is. Nintendo Switch 2 would make a lot of sense to do something like that if they stick with the hybrid form factor like we are expecting, expecting them to, with all of the reports suggesting that. But I'm personally team Super Nintendo Switch for nostalgia reasons, which, to be fair, the Super Nintendo didn't perform as well as the NES, and I don't necessarily think that the Switch 2 has to perform as well as the original Switch, because the original Switch is probably going to go down in history as the best-selling console of all time ever, period. So it may not hit the record-breaking numbers and take the cake as the best-selling console of all time ever for the Switch 2, but if you market it correctly, you give it a good name that consumers clearly know what it is. Switch Attach is not that, because it literally sounds like an accessory at that point, but providing Nintendo totally doesn't drop the ball with the bad name and bad marketing around the console, I think it's a pretty much foregone conclusion that it's going to be a shoe-in success for Nintendo when it's all said and done from a revenue and unit standpoint. But that's where I really want to hear from you guys at this point in the video. What do you think about the reports of an official Nintendo Switch 2 game being in development? And do you think that the name has anything to do with the actual console name, or this is just an indie dev kind of insinuating that whatever this engine and game project is that they're working on, it will also be supported on Nintendo's next-gen hardware? And what do you think about a name like Switch Attach? Do you think Nintendo would actually do something like that? Do you think that that is clearly not the hardware name and it was some kind of placeholder for the marketing? And what name do you ultimately hope we see the next generation Nintendo console hardware launch with? So thanks so much for watching the video today, everyone. Make sure you comment down below and share all your thoughts and feelings, regardless of if you agree with me or disagree with me. Go watch the video on screen next if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in the next video.